Today we're talking about the FiNN LMG, which was added to the game last week with the mid-season update. This gun is interesting because it's essentially 3, and one can even argue 4 guns in one with all the different attachment options that come with it. We're going to be talking about this weapon's stats, the major attachments it comes with, as well as some of my favorite loadouts that I want to share with y'all. I'll get started by saying the FiNN is a solid and fun weapon. It's not the best LMG, it's not the worst. Its most direct competition, I think, is the Bruen post-nerf, and I think they probably nerfed the Bruen so that there is room and reason to use this new weapon over the Bruen. We'll continue that discussion towards the end of the video when we discuss the current LMG meta. But let's get started. What's going on, everyone? My name is Sinister Skater. Welcome to the channel. If you haven't unlocked the FiNN, it's one of the easiest challenges we've had so far. All you need to do is get 1 melee kill using an LMG in 7 different matches. And this weapon isn't tied to the battle pass, so anyone can unlock it whenever. As I mentioned, there are a variety of ways you can use the FiNN. You can use it with its base barrel or with the faster firing adverse barrel, and then you can opt for the chainsaw grip stock for whichever barrel you decide to go with. I want to start by going over the default barrel and the default barrel stats. The default barrel, at least when it comes down to time to kill, is not good, like, at all. It has a fire rate of 640 rounds per minute, and when you combine that with its damage values, you get a slower time to kill than every other light machine gun minus the Holger at long range. The Holger has a faster time to kill this thing at close range. The FiNN's time to kill is anywhere between 188 milliseconds to 375 milliseconds in multiplayer. The Bruen is, I think, 20 milliseconds faster overall generally, and the PKM has a time to kill over 100 milliseconds faster at range. Now, keep in mind, it has another barrel that is indeed better when it comes to the time to kill department, but the default barrel is just trash. However, it is a very easy way to use the weapon. The default barrel has very low recoil, so it's easy to use at all ranges, especially in Warzone and ground war. The FiNN has a unique characteristic of a 92% movement speed, which is assault rifle level movement speed, and its reload speed is just over 7 seconds, which is faster for a light machine gun, but nowhere near the fastest like the Holger and the SA-87. All its other attributes are pretty much standard for light machine guns, whether it be sprint to fire, aim down sight speed, bullet velocity, etc., etc. In standard multiplayer, I really wouldn't recommend your default barrel. However, in Warzone, it's not necessarily good, but it's really easy to use. When you kit it properly, the FiNN is essentially what the Bruen was in Warzone, with a slower reload speed and a slower time to kill. What made the Bruen so awesome was that it was deadly, it was easy to use, and it was fast. The FiNN is fast, minus its reload speed. It's really easy to use, but it's not so deadly. I could feel that extra amount of time the FiNN took to kill in Warzone, especially when I was comparing that directly to using the Bruen and then the PKM as well. So it's kind of an iffy spot. If you have the jump on someone, it's really easy to take people out with, but if you're like in a close quarters gunfight or mid-range gunfight and you're both shooting at the same time, you're probably not going to be in the best situation with this FiNN. So overall, the default barrel, it's not good, but it is viable. It has its use cases. I mean, hell, even I like using the Holger in regular multiplayer, and it's worse than the default FiNN. So if you want to use the default barrel multiplayer, you'll be fine. The competitive way to use the FiNN, however, at least in multiplayer, is with the adverse barrels. That will up your fire rate and your time to kill. So there's 7 different barrel attachments for the FiNN. We'll say there's 8, including the default barrel that it comes with, just for comparison. There's the factory adverse barrel, which is the fastest firing equivalent of the default barrel. And then we have the XRK Pro Twist, the XRK Longshot, and the V8 Harrier barrels, which all have a faster firing adverse variant and the advantage variant for default barrel stats. Both the advantage and adverse variants have similar stat modifiers, although there's like 1 or 2 of the adverse barrels that have additional effects for like recoil and range. But overall, they pretty much do the same thing depending on which kind of variant you're using. Let's get back into the adverse barrels though. These will up your rate of fire to 1,000 rounds per minute while lowering your damage per bullet. This does result in an overall faster time to kill than the base barrel. You're looking at a time to kill anywhere between 180 milliseconds to 300 milliseconds in multiplayer, which makes the FiNN competitive. The downsides to the adverse barrel is that you have less base range, more recoil, and a noticeable slower bullet velocity of 63%. The default barrel shares a bullet velocity of 85% with all the other LMGs. 63% is pretty noticeable. It's also worth mentioning that the lower damage per bullet for the adverse barrels causes the weapon to lose some of its luster at mid-range. The adverse barrels do perform well at long range when it comes to time to kill, but that recoil is hard to manage. I really wouldn't recommend adverse for like Warzone, but close range is where the adverse barrels really shine. So when you break it down, the default / advantage barrels have a mediocre time to kill, but they're easy to handle, especially at long ranges. And the adverse barrels have a competitive time to kill, but they're harder to handle and perform best at close range. The last way you can change this weapon up is with the XRK chainsaw stock, which converts the FiNN into a hipfire only gun like the chainsaw LMG back in Call of Duty Ghosts. And this is my favorite way to use the weapon. It's really fun. The chainsaw stock will remove the ability to aim down sights, although you can still quote-unquote aim to tighten your hipfire spread, and you do want to make sure that you're actually doing this because there's a huge accuracy difference between actual hipfire and then like the aim down sight type hipfire. The other changes this stock makes is that it gives you faster movement speed and a big sprint to fire boost at 207 milliseconds. This is like halfway between assault rifle and LMG sprint to fire speed and leagues ahead of LMGs. You can use the chainsaw with both the advantage and the adverse barrels, although I would recommend using the adverse barrels, and I'll explain why when we get to the class setups. But before we get to class setups, I just want to give some overall last words on the FiNN and compare it to some of the other LMGs right now, because I don't think I'm going to be doing a separate best to worst for this season. But overall, I think the normal barrel for the FiNN really, it sucks when it comes to time to kill. It's easy to use, which may make it appealing in longer range scenarios like in Warzone, but there's much better options, especially if you can handle the recoil of the new Bruen or the PKM. The adverse barrels all have very similar stats to the Bruen after the Bruen got nerfed, and I think they nerfed the Bruen so that there is room for this weapon in this game and reason to use the FiNN over the Bruen or vice versa. In multiplayer, I think adverse FiNN is the optimal choice between the two, that being the FiNN and the Bruen, and in Warzone, I think the Bruen's still the best way to go if you can handle the recoil. But a byproduct of this Bruen nerf and the addition of the FiNN is that the PKM is back to being the best LMG without a doubt. And now that I'm saying this, maybe the rest of this will be in a separate video. I don't know, we'll see if I keep this in editing or not. So let's finish this video up with some class setups. We'll start with my one default advantage barrel recommendation, and this is going to be for your longer range fights. This has the XRK Longshot Advantage barrel, the TAC laser, the Ranger foregrip, and then either the muzzle brake or monolithic suppressor. You're probably going to be going with monolithic suppressor because it increases your range for Warzone and ground war when you're using this at long ranges. And then that last slot, I like to use the optic of my choice. Ammunition I really wouldn't recommend because it slows down your weapon more and or affects your bullet velocity. And the stocks, there really isn't a faster aim down sight speed. Maybe you want to go sleight of hand, but I like my optics. This loadout overall gives you a fast aim down sight speed with a good bullet velocity and max range, so you can use this with ease in like Warzone, ground war, etc., etc. My other class setup we have here is for your chainsaw. This has the FTAC V8 Harrier adverse barrel, the TAC laser, the 5.56 CT 75 round belt, sleight of hand, and the XRK chainsaw stock. And I want to talk a couple minutes here for your chainsaw loadout. I ended up liking this loadout the most. It's the fastest way you can use the chainsaw, which I think is the best way to use this. I've tried using it where you have like the maximum bullet velocity, although it's a slightly slower play style, and just going to hit fire people with the slower loadout just doesn't work. You want to be as fast as possible, which is why I recommend this. This will max out your quote-unquote aim down sight speed, your hip fire speed, your movement, reload, etc., etc. I was worried about using the chainsaw with very low bullet velocity because the CT rounds neuter your bullet velocity, especially in combo with the barrel here. But you want to be using this thing in close quarters combat and not long range, so I figured the bullet velocity really wouldn't matter much. And when I actually use this in gameplay, I found that to be the case. If you're wondering why tac laser is on there, it really does help with your aim down sight hip fire speed and letting you laser down targets faster, so I would highly recommend that. And I don't really see any other way to use the chainsaw. If you wanted to try out the adverse barrel in multiplayer, I'd recommend my first class setup, but swap in an adverse barrel of your choice, put on the muzzle brake instead of the monolith suppressor, and just be aware of the bullet velocity nerf you're using with the adverse barrel. If you're not using the chainsaw and you're just using like regular single fire adverse barrel, I would highly recommend against using the CT belts, because the CT belt with the adverse, again, neuters your bullet velocity, and it would just be hard to use like at long medium ranges when you're aiming down sight with an actual regular gun. So there you have it. There is my thoughts, my little review on the FiNN LMG. It's not really meta shaking, but I do think it is a fun addition to the game. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If you have a personal class setup you enjoy, share that with us all as well. If you guys enjoyed the video and learned something new, hit the like button, consider subscribing, because we're always talking about Call of Duty content on this channel, and check the links down below in the description if you'd like to help support my channel. As always, guys, thanks for watching. My name is Skater, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace out.